Hey everybody, welcome to the channel and thank you so much for joining me for a visit to Death Valley National Park, which is located along the border of California and Nevada. And we'll get straight to the park summary as we view sunrise here at Zabriskie Point. The pointy formation right before us is Manly Bacon, and then to the right of Manly Bacon is the Red Cathedral. Death Valley National Park was established in 1994 by President Bill Clinton. It was previously designated as a national monument in 1932 by President Herbert Hoover. The park sees about 1.1 million visitors annually. I experienced absolutely no problems with the crowds while I was here. The reason for that is Death Valley is actually the largest national park in the contiguous United States. Not only is it bigger than parks like Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon, it's actually bigger than the states of Delaware and Rhode Island combined. I would say there are 5 or 6 regions in the park, so we'll go to the park map. Here is an overview of the park, and we'll zoom in a little bit. In the north of the park, you have the Eureka Valley with the Eureka Dunes. Here we have the Mesquite Spring area with the Ubehebe Crater and Scotty's Castle. There's the Racetrack Valley with the Racetrack Playa. You have Stovepipe Wells with the Mesquite Sand Dunes. Here is the Panamint Springs area. Here's the Wild Rose Peak area. And finally, you have Furnace Creek, which I would describe as being the main area of the park. That's where the Badwater Basin is. The park protects Death Valley, of course, in addition to several other valleys, mountain ranges, I believe 5 or 6 sand dune fields, and various canyons and natural springs. We're not going to see any wildlife in this video. It's difficult to view any wildlife during the day because they're all trying to stay cool, just like we are. But there are bighorn sheep, coyotes, bobcats, foxes, cougars, mule deer, and I believe there are some bats within the park. And there's also the Death Valley pupfish. As Death Valley is the hottest place on planet Earth, so there is no qualifier there, no contiguous or US, it is the hottest on planet Earth. It has an extremely hot climate and there is very little rain here. I'm not going to wait until the end of the video to mention that the best season to visit the park is going to be during the wintertime. You don't want to visit this park after May or before October. Death Valley holds the world record for the highest recorded air temperature of an absolutely scorching 134 degrees, which was recorded in what is now the Furnace Creek area in 1913. And finally, for cell service, you're lucky to get any within the park boundaries, so make sure you download your maps. With all of that said, please stick around to the end of the video for my overall recommendation of the park and top tips. Now that we've left Zabriskie Point, which was named after the vice president of a borax company, we're going to travel south a little bit and head up into the mountains to see Dante's View. Now we're at Dante's View, which gives you an amazing panorama of the valley below. Now you may have seen this area before in an extremely famous sci-fi movie. If you want to think a minute about which film that is and maybe comment below, I'd appreciate it. I decided I wanted to get an even higher vantage point, so I hiked up to the top of this mountain peak, which I don't believe has a specific name. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I'd appreciate so much if you would please give me a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much, and let's continue with the video. The highest peak across from us in the Panamint range of mountains is Telescope Peak, which is a pretty cool name, which has an elevation of 11,049 feet. So it rises over 11,000 feet from the valley floor, which is directly below us, and that area is Badwater Basin, which is the lowest point in the contiguous United States at 282 feet below sea level. So we'll take some more closer views of the valley here, which again, is just an absolutely incredible sight. It's a little bit different from a forested mountain valley, but I think it is a spectacular view nonetheless. As you're viewing up the valley at the end of our line of sight there, that is the same view, yes, where Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker first laid eyes on the wretched hive of scum and villainy known as Mos Eisley in the film Star Wars. George Lucas used a matte painting to composite the spaceport on top of the valley there. So just why is Death Valley called Death Valley? There were some gold prospectors that were trying to make it out to California, and they got lost in the valley. And after being stranded for several weeks, and even having to resort to eating some of their oxen, William Manley and an associate, John Rogers, hiked some 250 miles across the Mojave Desert, where they were able to procure food and horses and then return to rescue the rest of their party. While only one member of the group actually died, on the way out, a member of the party said something to the effect of, "Well, there goes Death Valley," and the name stuck. Manley went on to write a book about the experience, and that helped further the legend and bring tourism to the area. We'll take one last look at the valley, and now we'll get moving on to another location in the park. From here, it was time to head north. I visited not too long after some catastrophic flooding, so unfortunately, the farthest I could go within the valley is the Stovepipe Wells area where the Mesquite Sand Dune field is. I made a quick stop at the visitor center, and they have an incredible relief map of the valley and the surrounding area. I always appreciate how the Park Service has these available so you can get a great overview and also orient yourself within the park. The visitor center here, in addition to sharing an incredible amount of information about the national park, which I was surprised had such a rich history, the visitor center is also a good spot to cool down out of the heat during the day. Now let's continue on to the sand dunes. Here's a good road to nowhere shot. Now that we've made it to the Mesquite Sand Dunes, which were also a filming location for Star Wars, and I think it's also a wallpaper for one of the Mac OS releases. Well, I'd be slick, but I can see where someone has walked their dog out here. So, maybe we'll go a little further ways east, maybe. So I wonder where these guys are all going. I don't think I'd want to be really hiking out to that high dune out there. You know, these dunes are, you know, they're like okay size and everything, but you know, it's not 800 feet tall, and I've been up an 800 foot tall sand dune, so I don't know if we'll hike all the way out there. But looks like these guys are trying to make it. Across from us, those are the Grapevine Mountains of the Amargosa Range. Yeah, so I guess I was being a little bit of a hiking snob. The dunes, I would say they're cool, but they are quite a bit smaller than I thought that they would be. And this area isn't quite as remote as I thought it would be. There's actually a road that runs right past it. So it wasn't quite as impressive as the dune field at Great Sand Dunes National Park, in my opinion. But the sand dunes, I do feel like do merit a visit nonetheless. Anywhere you see. And all you got to do is walk to the east about 10 minutes. I mean, you can still see the people. So, you know, it looks like I'm out in the middle of nowhere, but I'm actually not. It's just over those dunes right there. So, not at any risk, I don't think. And, you know, I've let all these people know that, you know, I'm from Florida. So the heat don't faze me. You know what I'm saying? So, but in actuality, it's super hot. So, won't do anything crazy. Oh man, somebody else has been out here. Kind of ruins it for me. Just hoping to find a spot where nobody had walked. Anyways, but this is super cool, right? Sort of feels like you're on Tatooine. Heading back into the main section of Death Valley, now we're going to view the Harmony Borax Works Interpretive Trail. If you're short on time, you can probably skip this trail, which goes over the history of borax mining within Death Valley. Borax is useful as a household cleaner and a stain remover. It also can be used as a pesticide and has quite a few other uses. At one time, Death Valley was the #1 site for borax mining in the world. The National Monument was created to prevent open mining within this area. That was funny. We're just going to swing the van around this way so I can stand in the shade of the van and take pictures. So, if you want a tip on when to come to Death Valley, I mean, I guess October's a good time. I don't know. I guess anytime it's hot, because there's no one here. They can't take the heat, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, works for me. I'll go ahead and give you my #1 tip for visiting Death Valley, and that is to bring an umbrella so you can keep the sun off of you. Here's Artist Palatte, and this looks basically like cotton candy or ice cream, and I think the different colors result from different levels of iron content within the various soils. The umbrella, it just seemed to make sense to just keep the sun off me, so I wouldn't have to just lather myself up with sunscreen, although you probably may want to consider that. It's just something I borrowed from Tuco in the classic Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Pretty much any time I brought the umbrella out in any park or place where it was really hot, I inevitably would hear somebody mutter, "Hey, I wish I would have thought of that." So that will be a great tip for you. Now it's getting a little bit late in the day. I made a little bit of a bad decision here to stop at the Devil's Golf Course. It's an interesting thing to see. The reason why it's a little bit of a bad decision is I didn't quite gauge the sunset right. So now we'll move on, and here we are at Badwater Basin, which again is the lowest point in the contiguous United States and the second lowest point in the entire Western Hemisphere. I think the lowest point is in Argentina, and the lowest point in the entire world is, of course, the Dead Sea. Running out onto the salt flats, I just managed to get a small glimpse of the sunset there. I really wish I would have been all the way down at the end of this path and all set up for sunset, but I'll just have to take the L and have to do better another time. Now that's going to bring us to my recommendation for the park and top tips. Death Valley is absolutely a destination park, no question about that. While I don't think it's a top 10 park, I probably should have included it as an honorable mention in my video of the top 10 national parks. Death Valley is really just an amazing otherworldly landscape, and there's really no place quite like it anywhere else in the United States. The park is definitely very large and has a lot of different geographic features for you to marvel at. So it has quite a few iconic landmarks, and sunrise and sunset here create magic moments just throughout the park. The only really two downsides to the park, in my opinion, are, well, one, there's very little cell service, if at all, and two, it's the harshness of the environment. You really need to complete all your hikes by about 10 a.m. if you're here in one of the warmer seasons. And also, while this was a national monument that was upgraded to a national park, many of the roads to some of the areas of the park, and I'm thinking of places like Eureka Valley or the Racetrack Playa, those roads actually require four-wheel drive and sometimes high clearance to be able to get to those areas. And by elevating Death Valley to a national park, it would be nice if the Park Service could work on improving the road access to those areas. As for some top tips, you do need to check the current conditions at the park. 2 years in a row, Death Valley was hit with some very powerful storms. So in certain areas of the park, such as Scotty's Castle, those areas are not anticipated to open until 2026. As for travel time, because of the size of Death Valley, you do need to allow quite a bit of time to travel between different areas of the park. Dante's View is actually about 80 miles away from Ubehebe Crater, for example, and that drive takes almost 2 hours. The large size of the park also means that you need to make sure you have a full tank of gas, as while there are gas stations within the park, the gas there is probably the most expensive in the entire US. It was $8 when I was here, and I told the rangers they might have a rescue on their hand because if I ran out of gas, I was pushing the van out of the park. As for how long to visit, you need to think about how many different areas of the park you want to see and then budget an entire day for each area. So one day for Furnace Creek or one day for Ubehebe Crater or something like that. As for sunset and sunrise, I felt sunrise at Zabriskie Point was a little underwhelming, so I think I would maybe go for Dante's View for sunrise, and then for sunset, I'd go with Badwater Basin and try to do a little bit better job than I did. So I think it'd be best to show up about 2 hours before sunset there just to make sure you can get a good shot. Any of the dune fields would probably be good options too. Boondocking is good around here. The only issue is, again, the size of the park, so it takes a while to get to a boondock spot as you can't overnight within the park. And for my final tip, no matter what your photography skill level, Death Valley is an absolutely outstanding park in general for photography, but particularly as a night sky park. So that's going to do it for Death Valley National Park. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks and take care. Bye.